Well, hello everybody, and welcome to Matrix Live episode. I think we're on like 40 of season 4 because people forgot to roll over from season 4 to season 5. But fun episode this week. I am here with Kegan.
Hello.
This is the first time you've been on Matrix Live since you came back from the dead.
Yes.
Keegan died to us for a couple of years, but he has now come back from the dead
Yes.
and is hacking away on Dendrite and peer-to-peer stuff, and also Neil Alexander. Sorry, Amandy, we might have forgotten to shut the door to the meeting room. How are you, Neil?
I'm very well, thank you.
And this is your second time, was it third time being abused for Matrix Live?
I don't know if I've been on Matrix Live yet.
Really?
I don't think I have.
Oh, well, welcome. This is
So,
exciting.
it could be first for both of us.
I haven't done it for ages, so I'm also feeling relative newbie symptoms. But thought it would be fun to talk about the peer-to-peer stuff that has been going on over the last, I guess, it probably began around end of December. When did you start
I
hacking
started in
on
the
it?
middle of December, so
Right, so there's a whole
around about
bunch
that.
of stuff where Neil has been hacking away, getting, what were you doing? I've got to know.
So we built the P2P demo in Go using the libp2p libraries,
And this was for FOSDEM.
and that was for FastM, and that mostly worked if the wind was in the right direction.
Hmm.
And since then, I've just been doing an awful lot of work trying to get Dendrite to be generally usable in the real world.
So the whole idea here is to take Dendrite itself and run it client side. And for FOSDEM, we did it in Go, running as a daemon on the laptop. Not inside Docker, we had a Postgres for Docker and then Dendrite sitting alongside it from memory.
With Riot as well.
Yeah, with
All
Riot
three
in
of
there
them.
too. And yeah, it didn't quite work on the day on FOSDEM. It did work really well at the meetup a couple of weeks ago, although the video of that is almost unusable, so nobody saw it, which was a bit sad. And then separately, Keegan, you've also been hacking on all this stuff too. What have you
Yeah.
been doing?
I mean, I've been primarily trying to take the stuff from the FOSDEM demo and make it basically work from there. So primarily that's actually getting Dendrite to compile to WebAssembly and then running in a browser, and then actually getting all the SQLite stuff working in the browser as well, because it is using a SQLite in-memory database browser side. So
Because that's where we got to actually before FOSDEM, that everything was running in browser apart from Postgres, and then there was a huge amount of work needed to try to get the SQLite transition done. And so I guess, and also Dendrite needed to work too, because it's all very well having the peer-to-peer underpinnings, which mean that you can have these nodes talking to one another over something like libp2p. But if Dendrite itself doesn't work, then it's a bit of a waste of time. So we've ended up, I guess, splitting Neil with you, looking more after Dendrite in the last month or
Yeah,
so.
more so room versions and exciting things like that.
State Res V2.
Yeah.
Res V2.
So
Yeah.
Dendrite now does state resolution v2. If you didn't read it in last week's TWIM, you heard it here first. um, how's the state res v2 stuff been?
Res V2 is fairly untested at the moment because we haven't been able to get it joined to any big enough rooms to really give it a stress test. But it has had some bugs fixed in it already, just with my little bits of testing that I've done. A lot of the work for room versions has come out of the fact that we want some bigger rooms to test it with, and all of the big rooms in the world are V3 and onwards. So
Yeah, good point. So v345?
345 is the plan. At the moment, we're quite close to 3 and 4, apart from some problems in Go Matrix Serverlib. V5 is going to be a little bit more challenging because of the signature checking, but
Remind me which one v5 is again.
that's where you actually care about the expiry of server keys and stuff like that.
Yes, yeah, that fun one.
So we're getting there.
So, I mean, there was, I think I jinxed this entirely by saying to Neil, V2 is the hard one because it's entirely new state res, and the others are just tiny little changes like how event IDs are and this whole key.
3.5 weeks later.
Yes, and it turns out they're going and changing the entire object model of Dendrite to support different types of event IDs and also just stringing through the version numbers everywhere, I guess.
Stringing through the version numbers everywhere, and the other thing is the changes in the event format as well. So for the auth events and the private events, that's different too.
Yeah, yeah. Well, good luck. And isn't it exciting that Dendrite stuff is actually happening again?
Yeah, it's
You can
getting
hear the audience saying, yeah, woo, Dendrite. And by the way, if people are wondering why the hell we're messing around with Dendrite, for context, and peer-to-peer in general. Basically, everybody else is frantically trying to get E2E by default working, and doing first-time user experience stuff, making Synapse scale horizontally. And so there's quite a lot of people now in the Matrix core team who are hammering away at that. So please do not watch this and think that, in fact, everybody's gone a bit crazy and got excited about peer-to-peer. It's basically only these two and a little bit of me getting overexcited about peer-to-peer-y stuff. So with that in mind, let's talk more peer-to-peer-y stuff. So does it work?
It does work. I've spent the better part of when I joined back in late January, basically trying to get this to work and hitting wall after wall after wall of problems. But it now does work. It seems sort of reliable. They all run service workers, which have a bunch of caveats associated with them as well, which is a bit awkward. And there's a lot of user experience things that could be a lot better about it, but it is actually available. Do we announce the magical URL?
Yeah, I think we should say that there is actually now, for the first time, a not production grade, but usable on the general internet, a copy of Riot Web running with Dendrite in browser, client side, the culmination of all of the slightly hacky hacking that's been going on over the last couple of weeks at
P2P.riot.im, which you probably could have guessed.
Yeah, possibly.
Tread with caution.
Yeah, tread with extreme caution. So if you do want to try this out right now, you can. We've deliberately almost run out of time, but sort of deliberately not hooked up the public rooms list. So on the demo that we did in FOSDEM, you get public rooms telling you everything that is out there on the P2P network. And how did that work in the end?
It used the libp2p pub sub. So there was basically a topic that contained all of the room adverts, and the home servers kept sending out adverts every, I think it was 30 seconds or so, might have been 15, saying, hey, I've got these rooms in my database which are marked as public, here they are. And all of the other home servers that were listening to that topic would just populate their own public rooms database with it. It was just a little sort of shim in the storage layer for the public rooms.
Right. So we haven't done that yet. So the only way you can use this is if you already know a room to join. Do we have invites yet?
You can't invite individual users now.
Okay, so Dendrite itself generally doesn't have invites.
Invites over Federation don't work.
Okay.
Yeah, it's sort of half there.
You've got the local side, but within the server. But if you want to talk over Federation,
yeah, I mean, all the communication here is all Federation. So if it's not in Federation,
well, you could invite yourself into a room, possibly, sort of.
I don't know why you would.
You could take your join event and turn it into go from join to invite and see how badly Dendrite explodes. Either way, what we're saying is that, well, shall we show it? Now, I'm going to set the screen share, not a screen share, I'm going to start capturing my screen here. 1 second. We spent ages trying to set this up beforehand and nothing was working. Hopefully this time it will work more. And, okay. So it should be recording everything on my screen now. We'll get into splices into the video in a bit. And you can see my Riot sitting here on p2p.riot.im. I'm logged in as Matthew with this beautiful MX ID, which is, I think you can say, because it begins with a 12 and elliptic curve 25519.
Yeah, it's an AG25519 key.
Cool. And you've got us with our free laptops. So if you're wondering why we're sitting here with our laptops looking supremely geeky, but yay! So it's actually the three of us actually here, and if we look through the MX IDs, this one ends FJC for Neil on his box there. Kegan's is ending ADM. Madam, obviously. You've been picking. Please don't tell me that you're doing proof of work to get memorable things. And these are the P2P public keys, right? Because what we've done is to take libp2p in JavaScript, take Dendrite in Go, compile Dendrite down to WASM, run it in a service worker, and have it talk over the JavaScript bridge into JavaScript to use the libp2p implementation there, which then uses WebSocket star topology rendezvous server that we now host at rendezvous.matrix.org on port 8443 because reasons. And that goes and coordinates the traffic together. And I think at the moment the traffic's all going over the WebSocket.
Yeah, so all the traffic is not going directly from laptop to laptop. It is all going up to rendezvous.matrix.org and then back down again. So it's not ideal, but
Cool. Right, our camera's not about to go to sleep on us.
I'll just wiggle the mouse on
Cool,
that.
thanks. Perfect.
Absolute video pros here, aren't we?
Yeah. So let's go and look in the console and see what on earth is going on. First of all, a really cool thing you can do on this is to hit refresh, or even you can close the tab entirely. What can possibly go wrong? So I'm going to close it, reopen it again. And because the Dendrite is running in a service worker, we're straight back into the session. So we're not persisting any of this yet. It is SQLite. Oh, we are still here. Yay! If we go into the console, are the databases still where they should be, Kegan? So if I go global dot go SQLite databases, then why isn't tapping J working? Then you get global is not defined apparently.
I think you just unscroll. You don't need global.
Okay, so okay, that's looking a bit more promising. Still not defined.
Because they are stored in the service.
Right. So here I'm in Riot Web, and if I go and change here, you've got a whole bunch of random extensions, and then you have the activated Dendrite service worker, and as well as the IndexedDB one that Riot uses to maintain your offline cache of the client. So this is a little bit of a head frack, to use the technical term, that your client has both got the normal Riot cache of the client data as well as your Dendrite running inside the client with its own cache of the data. Now we're on the right service worker. Hopefully I can do that. And come on, where are you?
You not scroll down.
No, I am scrolled down. I'm fairly sure it might be that. No.
It should display an error, right? Otherwise.
I take it you haven't been looking at the database manually.
No, because the database works. So I only look at it if it doesn't work.
I think it lost where I was again, to be honest.
That's it. That looks familiar.
Right, there we go. Go SQLite databases. So we've got Dendrite.js, Nafka.db, account.db, and a whole bunch of other ones here, because we literally have the SQLite databases of, which we've now lost, our common and garden Dendrite, just sitting here in memory. We don't persist them into local storage yet, but we could.
IndexedDB.
IndexedDB too. So if we restarted the service worker, the home server would just disappear entirely. What can we show people? What's going on with all the...
So you see all the requests, incoming and outgoing requests. These are not only CSAPI requests, but they're also federation requests. So if you scroll to the bottom, Matthew, and I say hello world, you should see lots. That's from Riot, which is actually kind of annoying. You can change it on the default levels to filter out warnings and errors. But if you scroll further up, you should start seeing some P2P stuff.
That's key query.
No, that's CSAPI key query. So which is not
you want a server key query?
You want
what about the hello world? Is more interesting.
The hello world will be.
There it is.
Yeah.
So there is an actual federation request.
And if you go a bit further,
and that's a sync request on.
No, that's the receive. That's from sync, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. So if you scroll further up.
Further up. Let's look right. Here we go.
So there is an actual genuine federation request of a federation/send with this beautiful URL with curve 25519 key of, I guess, with my server in, because this is coming in. And in fact, this is receiving. This is you putting the request to me on my node.
Yes, showing the hit on your machine.
Yes.
And the origin is you, ending in Madam.
Madam, yeah.
And the destination is me, ending with Vader. Go figure.
Yeah. And then you got the body. So
should we take
what these would normally do is because they've got signatures in here, there would need to be the keys would need to be fetched for that server. We don't actually do a federation key fetch request anymore. We used to, but that was a problem because these nodes come and go. Well, they really just go. They never come back, which means that you can never fetch the keys for them ever again. So we actually, because we are using the same single key for signing events as well as for the node ID, the IPFS, libp2p peer ID, we actually use that. So we just look at the server name and pull out the ED25519 public key from that.
You sure it's ED25519? Isn't it curve 25519?
I said 25519, I think.
Really?
Yeah. But the beauty of that is that you can obviously verify things long after the server is down.
Indeed.
So.
Yep. So it solves, in some ways, an entire class of problems that we have on the perspective servers that we have today in Matrix just by using the server name as its own key.
And in case people are wondering about the domains, they all start with like 12D. Was it 12D?
Yeah.
That's because it's not just the basic C4 of the public key bytes. There's also a little bit of header information because it's actually a peer ID. It's a peer ID. So it's whatever libp2p does for its magical peer ID stuff. Because we needed it to be compatible with the rendezvous server and everything that we're using as well.
So is this not ridiculously cool? If I go into my settings and scroll down and look at what server I'm connected to right now, literally home server, it thinks it's talking to a home server called P2P.Ryan.im, but there is no home server at P2P.Ryan.im. It is literally going and hijacking all of those requests and putting them through to the service worker. I wonder if there's a fun way that we can do that. In fact, we probably can do that by literally going to P2P.Ryan.im, Matrix, what's it going to be, client
versions.
And so it's given us the versions that the server supports. And if we go down to the bottom, sorry, it's scrolling too fast.
Versions.
Oh, I'll just do it again here. There it is. So you can actually see this request coming in and being serviced here by WASM, by the Go, and you even get like not stack traces, you get symbols going all the way through to the file numbers, the file names and the line numbers of the Go stuff that is executing in WASM, which is pretty cool.
If you wanted to prove that this wasn't actually an elaborate deception, you could actually take that p2p.write.in URL to another machine or another browser without the service worker, and it would verifiably not work.
Yeah, so what happens if we open this in an incognito tab like that? Not found, because it wasn't really there. Virtual servers, everybody. So what else can we show? Because this is working pretty well. I guess it has the disadvantage that if our nodes went offline, we're screwed.
Yeah, because we don't persist. So if we persisted the keys and the keys are the main one because the keys are also your identifier.
Yeah.
If we persisted the keys and we implemented backfill on Dendrite, then the fact that we don't persist the databases probably would be okay because you could still rejoin all your old room aliases and things should still backfill correctly.
But still, if all three of us went, then our databases are really very dead. They're no longer there. X-parent, X-SQLite databases.
Yeah.
Persisting would be good just for the whole databaase.
Yeah, and that shouldn't be too much work because like I said, the persistence is all done in JavaScript land, so we could just honestly, set interval to go and periodically write stuff to IndexedDB and persist the key. Is the important thing from Go.
And the nice thing about IndexedDB is that you do get a hook before it gets deactivated, possibly even when you close the browser. So we could just try to black it all to IndexedDB on shutdown. Not exactly durable in the acid sense of the word, but at least we'd have some hope of keeping your data.
Just blowing it away altogether.
Yeah, precisely. Baby steps. What else can we show people? We don't have media repository on here yet, do we?
No, there's no media repository, so trying to do that. Well, the thing is, what would you do with it? I mean, I was joking to Brendan, saying like, okay, well, we could, accept the files and then just gzip them and store them in IndexedDB, right? Which, you could do, but I mean, the amount of memory this thing would use would be kind of terrible.
I'm actually not sure that media over federation works properly in Dendrite generally at the moment. It does locally on the same server, but I don't know if it works over.
Yeah, I mean, this is a very good way to test like what federation capabilities are there in Dendrite.
Yeah,
it turns out not that much.
And in terms of just making progress on Dendrite full stop, this is a lot more random and fun than just saying, oh, we're going to replace Synapse with something faster. I mean, this is a whole new bleeding edge stuff.
You could do VoIP, but like what I did.
Oh, I was going to say, what happens if I try to create a new room and say this will never work because our unscripted demos have not been going well? And hello, perfect. And so I'm in there and I'm going to try inviting.
Invites won't work.
Why not? Oh, invites won't work. Okay, so I'll go make it a public room.
You need to make a public room and you need to set an alias.
Okay, well, we can do that.
The join rules.
Wherever the hell it's gone. So let's call it testing imaginatively.
And you need to set the join rule.
Which
is something which I didn't do before.
Okay, let me just grab its alias anyway, and the join rule is in security and preferences, confusingly, which is there, and
that's
good enough. Cool. Right, so I'm going to go back into our P2P room and say,
okay.
Oh dear, poor Wright doesn't recognise that's even a MX ID, room alias. It's embarrassing. And then hopefully Kegan joins the room, and Alexander joins the room. And hello! It's so cool.
But sadly,
Yeah.
no backfill.
Yeah, it doesn't do backfill.
Why not? I thought we had backfill in.
Backfill over Federation doesn't work.
Okay, sorry.
It's
Kegan.
another one of those
Yeah,
things that works
yeah.
locally on the same server, but it doesn't work over Federation. It's...
Yeah. So I mean, but again, this is the thing. A lot of the problems we're now seeing with P2P are
Fixed
problems
Dendrite,
which
generally.
are general
Yeah.
Dendrite problems rather than P2P problems. So when Dendrite sprouts these things, it will benefit P2P as well.
So what do we need? We need public rooms so we can discover other people rather than having to copy paste around aliases like we just did. We
Yeah.
need the store and forward stuff so that if everybody goes offline, the room doesn't wink out of existence.
Yeah, we need to really hack Riot to automatically kind of do the register login dance, because I mean, you could show that, you could nuke your entire instance and re-sign up.
Shall I try it just...
It's not a pleasant experience.
Will this work if I'm in then?
No, because the service workers don't work in community tabs.
Okay, let me fire open a Firefox.
It works on Chrome and Firefox, the record. But Firefox is special. You have to sign up within 30 seconds. And I'm not joking, because Firefox will kill service workers if they're not receiving any requests after 30 seconds. So whereas Chrome is a lot more generous and basically it has a lot more other complicated things to take into account before deciding whether or not to kill the service worker.
Whilst you're telling us about how this isn't working on Firefox, I'm trying to sign up.
Yeah,
on it.
so long as he manages to type a password in twice, which meets the Riot's complexity,
Don't distract me.
surprisingly difficult, then you'll be fine. But if you don't,
A bit like that, just saying.
But if you don't do that, then it won't work. And by it won't work, it means that the home server will actually disappear. So you'll try to sign up and be like, oh, there's no home server here because the service worker got killed. So yeah, basically, it is the main problem. That's something which I'd like to fix and try to figure out a better way of handling.
I lost a message.
Yeah, that's another Dendrite bug.
Yeah, so the first message you send after you join a room doesn't get synced. But again, that's a Dendrite issue. It's not a P2P one.
But yeah, it would be really nice if the registration flow meant I just didn't have to do that.
Yeah, so you should literally just go to p2p-writer.im and automatically signs you up. User IDs are also a bit of a moot point because they're just effectively this is like a nick that you're giving yourself, in which case it might as well be your display name.
Yep.
And it's going to change anyway with MSC 1228, like work in the future anyway.
Yeah. So obviously it seems very silly to have to be forced to register up, especially with like a password and everything, to a home server that doesn't exist, but you do.
So what other things are we doing? I mean, all of this is really a proof of concept. We do it in browser mainly because it's fun to demo and test against and means that people don't have to install software to play with peer-to-peer. We've, I guess, over the last couple of days been talking through what comes next in general for peer-to-peer.
So I mean, there's a whole bunch of improvements we could do. So like at the moment, like we said, the topology is that it all talks to a rendezvous server and then everything bounces off that.
Oh, yeah.
So we could swap that out for a WebRTC-based WebSocket style.
Yes, I mean, that's what the rendezvous server is meant to do. It's meant to just allow two people to discover their own endpoints because browsers don't allow inbound connections. And then having discovered the existence of the other person, you set up the point-to-point between them. Whereas, we just aren't ironically doing peer-to-peer at the moment, which is a
so I mean, we're good?
Yes,
Ish.
at least I have audio. Sometimes we've recovered. We're fine.
Okay. But yeah, so basically a very similar VoIP dance is kind of what we want to be doing with peer-to-peer. So that means when you do send messages and you send federation requests and all this other stuff, it is literally going point to point. That would be something I'd like to add support for.
And we certainly will be looking at routing intelligence as well, so that in more interesting topologies we do the right thing rather than just...
Yeah.
So we just had a big discussion about how we handle offline support. So if the three of us are on ad hoc network right now, this will actually not work because we won't be able to talk to the rendezvous server. But if we...
In principle, that works with the Go demo.
Yeah, and it did work most of the time on the Go demo. But imagine that we had proper P2P in browser or we were running P2P natively. It's all we could be offline and we might have a local copy of rooms which were part of the internet and part of the wider matrix. We go offline, we chat to each other and come back. Does it sync again? And if one of us can tether to the internet, does the data go through that tethered person to resynchronize with the wider matrix? is one of the questions we've been arguing back and forth. And I think the conclusion is that we definitely want it to resync, obviously, when you come back into connectivity. But it's not so important if you can randomly tether through one person and destroy all of their data because they end up accidentally being the one kind of point. Oh, I thought a good point though, for like punching through malicious networks, like Great Firewall scenarios, it could be quite nice to have the one person who has got a reliable connection through the two separated network domains being able to go.
Just fixed China in one swoop.
For some value of fixed. What other things were we talking through in terms of what we want to do with P2P? I mean, the whole point is ideally in future Riot would just be P2P by default, and you don't have to pick. No, thank you. Yeah, Riot wouldn't. A Riot user wouldn't have to pick a server. They just start off peer-to-peer, and then when they need a server because they want somewhere to persist their data, or they work for a company, and that company, really, weirdly enough, doesn't want everybody to just be smearing the data around the place, but instead it's being pinned to a server that IT run in the right country with the right data retention and all that sort of thing, that we can upgrade them into it. What else?
The centralized identity is one of the big points just in general.
Yeah.
Making it work across multiple devices because, let's face it, most people these days have multiple devices.
Yeah, and that then gives us account portability because the act of logging in on another device is the equivalent of porting your account to a new home server. Which we haven't really written down, but it kind of comes from that. Better GDPR compliance, because then, separately from that, it's useful if we can use IDs which you can blow away after the fact, and rather than them being a permanent record of who was talking to who. It gives us metadata protection. If people are purely peer-to-peer and the only copy of the room sit on the servers, on the clients, then there is no server sucking it all up. And all sorts of good stuff like that. I won't bore you with the whole list. We'll probably go and write up our notes and publish them somewhere. And in fact, once the p2p.riot.im thing is ready to go, I think we should do a big blog post and tell people this exists and watch how rapidly the IPFS WebSocket star server explodes as everybody tries to route all their federation traffic through a single centralized bottleneck for the entire network.
Can we get the WebRTC stuff in there first before we do that?
Yeah, we probably should, to be honest.
To reduce the amount of load on that poor server?
What about Example, Neil?
So, yeah, that's going to be another area that we'll be looking at, even if we don't use it as a whole entity, if we can instead look at borrowing some ideas from it, because a big part of this problem is how do we deal with sort of scale-free graphs, networks that might be.
What is a scale-free graph?
It's effectively a network with sort of ill-defined topology. It's a really simple term. But if you had a whole bunch of users that took off somewhere and were ad hoc connected to one another, but you couldn't predict the topology of it, that has to be a problem that we can solve.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to know that Matrix will do the right thing without sending ridiculous amounts of data over the wire or the air.
I mean, this is basically what we were arguing about yesterday in a slightly elliptical way of. We basically looked at it in two ways. That either you can assume you have an overlay network like a Dragzil that is allowing these nodes in different network in conditions and connectedness to be able to somehow talk to one another, or we could do it the other way and sort of say from first principles, how do you extend what Matrix is today to go peer-to-peer? And I mean, we need to finish that conversation, and we're comically running out of time, so we might as well just have it on camera to some extent now. Was the realization that one approach you could use is that we could just use DNS, I hate to say it, for discovery. So I could still be at Matthew on matrix.org as well as at Matthew on arrowsphere.net, and these could be aliases pointing through to your public key. So the human discovery bit of it is still DNS. It's still a bit prone to censorship in that people could block that domain or something.
But the point is that it's not your only identity.
Yeah, you're not locked into it, and also you're not prone to the homograph attacks as well. But that's why we developed user IDs to be.
Well, you get homograph attacks within domain names and IDN attacks and all that stuff. But I'm more worried that it doesn't help you much with the metadata thing. In that, if you want to see who is trying to talk to Matthew on matrix.org, you still have a pretty good idea of well, basically there's going to be the home server at matrix.org acting as a rendezvous point, which will be going and tracking the public key that name maps through to.
It doesn't need to though, right? I mean, like all we really are saying is that the matrix.org is just saying, I'm okay with giving you this little name and this label and attaching it to this public key.
Yeah.
And I'm okay to assert that I've given permission for this mapping to exist. It doesn't mean that we have to use matrix.org as a relay server, rendezvous server, whatever. They don't have to be coupled, but we generally couple.
But the lookup itself, though, is going to have to be that. If you don't know who I am, and you want to find out my public key and also where that public key is, but particularly the initial step, the human to public key mapping, you're going to have to come to that server.
Yes, of course.
Which
So that is a bit of a metadata leak. Suddenly you know who's talking to who and when, because the strangers will be going and doing a lookup on who I am.
Although the frequency of those lookups will be a lot lower, because once you know a public key of a user, you don't tend to need to look. You don't need to look it up again after that. So there's a statistical element to it.
Yeah.
But then separately, having got your public key, you need to also find out what random IP points and rendezvous endpoints, what rendezvous clients, what endpoints you're meant to be connected to in the peer-to-peer network for that. And the obvious place to put that information is probably also on the home server. And sure, you can replicate it onto other ones too.
I'm just thinking like if I have a fancy domain name running on a Raspberry Pi at home, and I want to give that on a business card or something, which then maps to a public key, but in actual fact, I don't actually want to use that for relaying all my traffic or for people to be talking to it. I should be able to go somewhere else and actually use matrix.org because I don't want to use my local one. I don't see, we don't have to couple them tightly.
Agreed. Either way,
we may still want to.
Basically, I think there's got to be a DHT versus a kind of gossipy, SSB thing, or even a DNS thing to try to figure out how to do the discovery. And that's probably the single biggest next step in terms of then also working out how this hybridizes nicely with Matrix. And I think we want to play with other overlays, whether that's Yggdrasil, looking at DAT as well. They've got their cool Cabal project, which shows that chat over DAT can be good, but it's a shame that it doesn't use all the rest of the Matrix stack in terms of Riot and client APIs and AS APIs and bridges and everything. So that would be fun. But I think for now, we probably just want to play with this thing with P2P and Anger a bit more and kick the tires and see when it falls over.
Yeah, basically, and in the process, they'll probably fix some federation bugs with Dendrite, which is good.
And only make Dendrite better and better. I mean, the race is on between p2p.riot.im and everything else.riot.im.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, anything else we should be saying about this?
Upgrades. So if you do happen to go to p2p.riot.im, whenever an upgrade gets pushed, so that means the service worker gets updated, the SW.js, you will automatically be logged out. So because the code will actually check once a minute, there's registration.update called in the set interval. So whenever you push new code, which might have breaking changes and stuff, you will be logged out. You will get a new home server, which means you will lose your conversation history because we don't persist that currently. That's
Just
something to be aware. So don't set up have lots of people on peer-to-peer and be like, so long as we never close the tab, everything's going to, well, even close the browser, I should say, everything's going to be persisted in memory forever. That is not true.
Because it's going to self-destruct all over you.
It will self-destruct the moment I push some code, so I'm sorry. Don't blame me. I warned you.
Anything on your side, Neil?
No, I think that probably just about covers it.
Well, congratulations, folks, for going and putting together a completely dodgy mad science experiment. Certainly, when I was first playing around with this Web3 Summit last year, rather comically, I tried to do this whole thing in 24 hours and I got as far as getting the P2P to HTTP layer 3 of the 4 legs working. So I got request from Go to JavaScript, response from JavaScript, and the video cracked out. And as I was waffling away, basically trying to do a go team, yay, this came together, and was saying in Web3 Summit, so basically a response from the JavaScript server through to Go, but not back to the Go client. And Then I lost the work because I'm an idiot, and then we started over again in December. This is why you should commit early and often, even if it's a random proof of concept. And now it's all come together, so thanks everybody for going and making crazy science experiment. Let's see if anybody actually uses it on p2p.riot.im. And if you need somewhere to exchange your room aliases, we recommend #p2p-matrix.org, which is, well, historically been a fairly low bandwidth room for people working in the P2P space, but we're now going to have it as a free-for-all for people who want to turn up and say, oh my god, how cool this is! And I suspect it might just still be us doing it.
Possibly.
But also, I guess the only other thing to add is that Dendrite sprouted SQLite support as a result of this work on P2P.
Yeah, so I'm not sure whether that's a good thing for Dendrite running on servers. We're certainly not recommending it, but certainly.
How many years we promised that we weren't going to do that, but it's happened. So
you should check it behind.
Complete with site tests.
Yeah.
Do not pass.
Perhaps we should.
They mostly pass. They sometimes entirely pass. Some of the tests are flaky.
Perhaps we should put it behind a JS if-def thing for utter evil to try to force people never ever to use it in actual native.
No, I mean, like if it is working and it's fine.
That's what we said with Synapse. It's really cool how well SQLite works.
But the thing is that it will bit rot then.
Yes.
If we don't.
Well, no, it isn't, because everybody's going to use it every day of their lives in P2P.riot.
Well, if people want to use it in a server environment, they should be allowed to do that.
Choice for
they
them.
might hate themselves, but
I think we have to
I
stop
don't know,
people
I think-
like stapling themselves to the desk just
I don't
because
know.
you can.
When I've been speaking to people, there are some people who are like, yeah, I want to run Dendrite because it's like, yay, go. But they don't want to be running a Kafka, a Zookeeper, and a Postgres. And it's like, well, now you don't. Use Monolith and use SQLite, and ta-da!
Okay,
user
with the
on a
comments.
home server, it's easier, isn't it?
Right.
So
So now you can do that.
Anyway, you got to get a train in like 10 minutes, haven't you? We should probably stop chatting.
yeah, probably.
Thanks for coming on the show, and let us know how you get on, everybody listening on #P2P on matrix.org. Have a wonderful weekend and see you soon.
Bye.
Happy weekend, everybody.